The Archon Prime was reading the file on humans for the third time when his fleet entered Earth's gravity well, and he still found nothing worth fearing. Sectavril Duron, senior commander of the Vothrani hegemony's 3rd Diplomatic Armada, veteran of 9 subjugation accords, architect of planetary surrender instruments the way lesser beings collected metals, set the data slate on his armrest and watched the blue-white sphere rotate below the viewport. 14 warships held position behind the unbroken mandate, engines cycling at minimum draw, because you did not need to threaten a species that had already stopped fighting. Earth's orbital defense grid had gone dark 11 days ago, not through any spectacular destruction, but through the quiet administrative cessation of funding and technical personnel. Humanity had abandoned its own weapons before the hegemony needed to dismantle them. That detail, Sectavril had noted in his campaign assessment, was the most interesting thing about this species. They surrendered with managerial precision. In the forward conference module, Earth's lead negotiator was already seated. Ambassador Amara Osebansu had arrived 20 minutes before the scheduled opening. She sat with both hands flat on the table, posture so still it registered on Vothrani's sensory organs as either profound calm or acute suppression of terror. The two were physiologically identical, in his experience, and the distinction rarely mattered. Her aide stood 2 paces behind her, a young officer named Priya Anand who did not look at the door when Sectavril entered. She looked at Amara. One glance, duration less than half a second, and whatever passed between them left no trace. Ambassador. Sectavril settled into the elevated chair his protocol staff had assembled, positioning him physically above every human in the room, a standard arrangement, and one that the hegemony's behavioral models indicated would introduce a useful subliminal disadvantage into the opposing party's cognition. I am told your species has a tradition of offering refreshment at the opening of formal proceedings. We do. Amara's voice was low and unhurried. Would you prefer to begin with the territorial clauses, or the resource extraction schedule? Sectavril's antennae lifted by 3 degrees. Every species he had ever faced at this table had opened by asking for more time. They wept, catalogued cultural treasures, appealed to interstellar precedent, demanded to speak with higher authorities. This one had opened with logistics. Territorial first, he said, and watched her carefully. She opened a physical document. Paper, which his mission briefing had flagged as an archaic affectation specific to human legal tradition, and turned to a page marked with a small adhesive tab. The document smelled of something. He catalogued it automatically: printing ink, mild chemical preservative, and a faint organic note he could not immediately classify. He would think about that smell later. Article 1, she said. Earth and its moon acknowledge hegemony administrative primacy for a period of 50 standard years, subject to the conditions enumerated in Schedule C. She looked up without lifting her chin. Your legal team will want to review Schedule C before we proceed. My legal team, Sectavril said, reviewed every document your government transmitted before this vessel entered your system. Then they'll have questions about the linguistic framing of Clause 14 Delta. She said it the way someone mentions a minor scheduling adjustment. Sectavril gestured to his chief treaty analyst, a young specialist named Verithen who had observed 6 prior surrender negotiations and never once needed to flag a document for secondary review. Verithen pulled the relevant clause onto her display, read it twice, and said nothing. That was the first sign. He did not read it as such. The first session ran 4 hours and 40 minutes. By the second hour, Sectavril had noticed something he could not immediately name. The ambassador was not fighting him. She was also not surrendering in the usual sense, not performing the visible diminishment his behavioral models predicted, the progressive shrinking that indicated a negotiator running out of arguments. She was doing something he had no precise word for in Vothrani: navigating. Each clause he advanced, she accepted with a modification so small and technically narrow that his legal team cleared it within minutes. Earth conceded mining rights across the outer asteroid belt. Amara requested that environmental impact assessments be logged with the hegemony's Bureau of Territorial Records, citing procedural consistency with other administered territories. He saw no reason to object. Earth conceded communication blackout protocols during periods of hegemony administrative review. She requested that all blackout orders be transmitted via Vothrani standard encryption format and archived on Vothrani-operated servers, legally timestamped by hegemony-certified authorities. Again, no reason to object. Earth's treaty linguist, a small, quiet man introduced to the room's record only as Dr. Yusuf Erdogan, senior specialist, had spent the first 2 hours making annotations in the margin of the physical document and murmuring occasionally to Amara in a language Sectavral's translation system identified as Yoruba partial dialect, urban variant, insufficient corpus for real-time processing. By the third hour, Erdogan had stopped annotating. He sat back from the table, hands folded in his lap, and looked at the middle distance with the expression of a man watching something he built from a distance, confirming it works. Sectavral called a recess. Ambassador. In the corridor outside the module, with Verithen standing at a respectful distance, he studied the human across 3 meters of recycled ship air. Your representatives are more cooperative than our intelligence models indicated. Amara poured herself water from a ceramic carafe on the side table. She had, somewhere in the second hour, stopped offering any to him, without explanation or apology, a small social withdrawal that the behavioral files said should indicate distress. She did not look distressed. Our models said the same about you, she said. You modeled us. For 60 years. She drank, set the cup down. Your survey vessels have been in this sector for 60 years. We watched. Something moved behind Sectavral's compound eyes. Not concern. Something that occupied the same neighborhood. And what did you observe? That the Vothrani hegemony, she said, is exceptionally precise about honoring its own archived legal instruments. He filed it as a curiosity. The final session opened at 0600 Standard. Earth's sun was rising over the Pacific, and the Pacific was empty. Humanity had repositioned its naval assets inland, another strange administrative decision that Sectavral's staff had flagged and categorized as logistical capitulation. Verithen delivered her secondary analysis at 0545. She stood very still when she did it. Still in a way she had not been in 6 prior negotiations. That was the second sign. Archon Prime. She held her data slate with both hands. The environmental assessment requirement in Article 3, the logging obligation with the Bureau of Territorial Records. Cleared in Session 2. Move to outstanding items. The Bureau of Territorial Records, Verithen said, falls under the jurisdictional authority of the hegemony's Internal Accountability Charter. Section 7 of that charter specifies that any environmental violation logged on a hegemony-administered territory constitutes grounds for administrative review under the Interstellar Governance Compact of Standard Year 7441. She paused. A compact which 47 sovereign species have ratified. Sectavral turned to face her fully. Continue. Earth's outer asteroid belt contains dense heavy metal concentrations. Standard extraction at the rate specified in our resource schedule would generate compact qualifying logged violations within approximately 18 months. Her voice had gone flat the way metal goes flat when it's under too much weight. The violations would appear in Vothrani records. Filed by Vothrani administrators. Authenticated by Vothrani legal authorities. Another pause. Once filed, the compact review process requires a multi-species oversight panel. It cannot be closed by hegemony veto alone. It requires full signatory consensus. The conference room held 17 living beings and went completely silent. They cannot, Sectavral said slowly, have predicted that we would agree to. They suggested the logging format. We agreed. Verithen's voice had no inflection left in it. They suggested the encryption standard. We agreed. They suggested hegemony authorities provide legal timestamps. She set the data slate on the table. Every document in this treaty is Vothrani authenticated. Every violation it enables is Vothrani attributable. Every oversight mechanism it activates runs through a body that has never once in 4,000 years failed to convene. Sectavril walked to the viewport. Earth hung below him, patient, blue, indifferent to the 14 warships above it. He returned to the table at 0600 as scheduled, because he was Sectavril Duron, and he had never once been late to a session in 30 years of service. Amara Osebansu was already seated. Priya Anand stood 2 paces back. Gar. Erdogan sat with his hands folded and looked at nothing. Ambassador. He made his voice a controlled instrument. I wish to revisit the framing of the resource extraction schedule. Of course. She did not open a document. What specifically concerns you? The environmental logging structure. Your team preferred that format, she said. We were glad to accommodate. The silence lasted long enough for the planet below to rotate 1 full degree. You knew, Sectavril said. Not an accusation. A comprehension, arriving late, the way large geological events arrive, not suddenly but all at once. We studied the compact, she said. The hegemony signed it in standard year 7441. Your obligation to honor it predates this negotiation by quite a long time. We simply, something in her voice went very quiet, the way a blade goes quiet when it has finished its work, we simply ensured you had a reason to exercise it. Sectavril looked at the table where the document lay, sealed, countersigned, transmitted to the Bureau of Territorial Records at 2300 the previous evening by his own communications officer, authenticated by his own legal certification system. The treaty you have signed, he said, binds the hegemony to obligations that you designed. The treaty you signed, she said, meets every hegemony legal standard. Your own attorneys certified it. Your own archive holds it. She placed her hands flat on the table, the same position she had held when he walked in the door. He now realized, at the opening of every session, every recess, every moment she had sat across from him. I didn't deceive you, Archon Prime. I gave you exactly what you came here for. And in 50 years. In 50 years, when an oversight panel holds 47 signatories and 600 incidents on Vothrani record, the administrative status of this planet will be subject to mandatory compact review. She looked at him directly for the first time since the opening session, the way someone looks at something they have already decided about. You came to write the terms of Earth's defeat. I let you write them. I simply wrote Schedule C first. Sectavril thought about his 14 warships. He thought about the document, already archived in systems he could not access without triggering the very review process it was designed to activate. He thought about voiding it, the order he could give in the next 30 seconds, the legal instrument he could revoke. And he understood. A void order on a signed, archived, multi-party treaty, authenticated by hegemony authorities, witnessed by hegemony law, would not merely breach the compact. It would tell every species in the catalogued galaxy that Vothrani legal certification was decorative. That hegemony authentication could be unmade by convenience. That their archived word was paper. It was not a trap, because a trap implies something was hidden. She had hidden nothing. She had simply understood, with absolute and surgical precision, what the hegemony valued beyond any single planet, any single campaign, any 4,000-year record of undefeated conquest. Its word. I don't need you to respect me today, Amara Osebansu said. I needed you to sign. Sectavril dismissed his staff. He remained in the conference module alone for 11 minutes. Through the viewport, Priya Anand crossed the umbilical walkway with her head down. Erdogan was ahead of her, moving without hurry. Neither looked back at the warship that could reduce the city below them to vapor in 4 minutes. Amara was last. At the hatch she turned, and the light from the corridor fell across her at an angle that showed nothing of whatever she felt. "Your fleet," she said. "For the record, keep it outside our gravity well during the compact review periods. It will read better in the filings." He said nothing. She left. By 1800, the Vothrani Third Diplomatic Armada had withdrawn to the outer system. No statement was issued. No official reason was logged. 14 warships simply moved, the way water moves from somewhere it can no longer hold its shape. In a converted records annex in Accra, a building that had survived 11 days of orbital uncertainty by being too small and too full of paper for any targeting algorithm to bother with. Amara Osebansu sat against a wall with a glass of palm wine she had not yet touched. "Your brother," Priya Anand said, from across the room. "Yes," Amara said. "He would have." She drank. Dar. Erdogan opened the archive treaty on his screen and read clause 14 Delta one more time, not because he needed to, but because he had spent 4 years writing it in 3 languages and 8 months rendering it into Vothrani legal idiom, and some things deserve to be read slowly, at the end, in a quiet room. Outside, Earth turned toward morning. The ships were gone. Somewhere in a hegemony archive, a legal timestamp sat in a record that no authority could alter without destroying the authority itself, certified, witnessed, and permanently held by the very power that had arrived to end humanity's independence. The Conquerors had come to write the terms of a surrender. She had let them sign the terms of their own restraint. And for the first time in the Vothrani hegemony's 4,000-year history, one of its subjugation accords contained a clock that ran the other direction, not counting down to occupation, but counting up, year by patient year, toward the tribunal that a defeated species had quietly assembled out of the enemy's own good word.